welcome to the Barrel House. I am your host, Joe Kane, and today is the first off-format episode we're going to do. In the last episode, I talked about making some changes so that we kind of alternated formats, and it's going to be the first one that's not just a straight review. We've got a listicle, but first, I got to pay the bills. What does that mean? That means I have to tell you that the Barrel House is always 100% listener supported. That means that you, the listener, and those of you who support me over at patreon.com/barrelhouse make all of this possible. Your money, your support is what makes these whiskeys possible. It makes this gear possible. It makes hosting the podcast and hosting and editing, all of those things possible. Without your support, the show wouldn't exist. So I have to thank you all so much for that, especially our Whiskey Legend tier patrons, Greg, Katie, Lauren, and Joe, who are pulling way more than their fair share of the load, keeping this show live and independent. So thank you all so much. I deeply appreciate it. If you want to be my boss, support me over at patreon.com/barrelhouse. As little as $1 a month can help keep the show kicking ass and taking names, or whatever you think this show does. It'll keep doing it if you support me there. Now, onto the show. So I got on Instagram, I threw a story up, I asked what you're comfortable spending on a bottle of whiskey, typically what you're comfortable spending on a bottle of whiskey. And there was a couple of crazy answers. I shouldn't say crazy. There's a couple of wildly out of normal answers, like I never spend less than $200. I never spend less than $300 on a bottle of whiskey. Maybe you only ever have it on special occasions or something. Maybe that explains it. But for most of us, that's way out of normal, way out of my price range for what I usually spend on a bottle of whiskey. There was a couple of real low answers, and I've got one bottle for that low spectrum, but the bulk of these are kind of in that middle range, which was kind of like two groups that I kind of combined into one, which kind of turns into like a $30 to $100 range. It was kind of a lot of like the 30 to 50, and there was kind of the same amount in like the 60 to 100. So we're gonna smash those together because they almost overlap and run through some whiskey. So let's get started. I'm not gonna drink all of these because I don't want to fall asleep before the show's over, but I am gonna talk about them all. So first up, $20 whiskey, Old Grandad, bottled in the bond. If you've listened to the show, you've heard me talk about this before. This is a stellar bottle for $20. What does it mean? What does bonded mean? Bonded means bottled in bond, which means it is at least 4 years old, exactly 4 years old. It is exactly 50% alcohol. It is the product of one distilling season under one master distiller. It is aged in a bonded warehouse, so on and so forth. Basically what it means is it is a much better bottle of whiskey than the regular Old Grandad, and it is about $3 more, $4 more. So if you see bonded on a bottle, and especially in this lower price point, usually it's like a shortcut, like a wink and a nod that it's a much better bottle than most of the other ones in that. And I, to my taste, don't think there's a better bottle than this in that real low price point range. You know, there's like the Evan Williams Bonded is another bottle in the bond that's right in the same range. It's like a $2 cheaper than this. I like this flavor profile a little bit better. You might like the Evan Williams a little bit better. This does have some like cinnamon and nuttiness that is not always everybody's favorite. So it's gonna be a little bit of a personal preference thing. But I do think, to my taste, this is the best bottle in that like $20 range. So that again, that is Old Grandad Bonded. I think it's a great bottle for that range. So going forward, I kind of tried to pick some that made sense, a couple of options for different, and what that means is what I came up with for that is like a couple of scotches, bourbons, rye, kind of scattered around the price point to sort of try to fit something for everybody in this list. So what I started out with is Scarabus. Scarabus is a Islay single malt. This is a $30 bottle, and it is crazy how good it is for $30. This is a single malt Islay Scotch. It is sourced, I do not know from where. It is smoky, it is complex, it's got some of that cheesy funk, it's got some sweetness and fruitiness, a little bit floral notes. It's got all those things people love about Islay Scotch, just a little bit less alcohol proof, and a little bit less complex than you're normally used to with like an Ardbeg or a Lefroy. Tastes a little bit young, but it's also $30. It's cheap enough that if you like smoky cocktails, it's a great option because it still carries the flavor profile you need for those and are really pleasant. Up until I found Scarabus recently, I would have said maybe like Great King Street Glasgow blend in this price point, but that's not nearly as smoky or like down this lane as this is. This is a really tremendous bottle if smoky scotch is your thing. All peat all the time. I'm a big fan of it. That is Scarabus, and like I said, $30. And it's a little bit hard to find right now because everybody's kind of like queuing into how good it is, but if you can find it, it's a totally good option. I've been looking for some to send out to a friend, and I can't find any right now, but my eyes are open. From there, I have bourbon. Same price point. This is, well, I shouldn't say that. This is also in that 30 to 50 range. This one's at like the $50 end of the spectrum. This is Old Forester 1897. That in focus there for the people watching the video. Old Forester 1897, again, is a bottled and bond whiskey. This is Brown-Forman, Old Forester. Brown-Forman is just destroying with their whiskey row line. It's so good. Everything on that is so good. I know I raved about it on the Old Forester 1920 episode, but I can't say enough. And I feel like maybe I picked this one for this list because it's a little bit lower proof than the 1920. It's a couple dollars cheaper. Might make it a little more accessible. And if you're not used to like that higher proof point of the 1920, this one's a little, and this is a delicious, it's got all those like traditional bourbon notes in a really surprisingly complex, pleasant evolution. I love it. This is a great bottle. That's my bourbon $50-ish mark. From there, we start creeping up. I'm gonna put a rye now in the middle. It's right above Old Forester price point wise, and right below my next whiskey after it price point wise. And this is Wild Turkey Rare Bead Rye. This is an absolute steal for the money. If you are a rye person, this is probably one of your best bang for your buck ryes. It's not the best rye, but bang for your buck, it is right up there. And if you're not a rye person, or not sure if you are one, I should say, this is a great one to try out to see if rye is for you. This one is around here, it's like $58. It's 56%, so you gotta be used to proof a little bit, but it's a really delicious rye and it holds its own. It's not quite as good as, but it holds its own with like Michter's barrel strength rye. It's pretty close. You know, it's 75 or 80% of the way there, but it's like less than half the price, which makes it a real bargain. I love this. This also makes fantastic old fashions. And it's really, if you're a mixer, like I don't mix a lot, but on real hot days, I will totally mix some soda with whiskey or something, or do an old fashioned or whatever. And this with ginger ale is next level. I know that's sacrilege, but when it's hot, sometimes you gotta do it, you know? Whatever, you want a sweet treat, leave me alone. Let me drink my whiskey. It's also really great straight. It's really great on the rocks. It's great all around. Super versatile, super delicious. Wild Turkey, Rare Breed Rye. Hard to beat. Hard to beat that. We're gonna step up from there to one that kind of encompasses the whole $60 to $100 price range all by itself. And that's because its MSRP is like $65, but it's always like $90 when I find it. I actually got lucky. The last couple I found have been 80-ish, still overpriced, but I think worth it. I should say still over MSRP, but I think worth it. I think this whiskey is probably worth it up to $100, and then it's really start getting into like questions of principal value at that point. And this is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Now there are a few things I love about this, and I'm gonna get into like the romance of whiskey here for a second. First, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is always a hitter. I've never had a bottle I didn't like. Some more than others, but I've never had a bottle I didn't like. Even the most recent batch, the batch B521, which was like divisive as hell, I was a big fan of. It's a little bit lower proof, which is where all the divisiveness came from, but it's still 58% and it's still delicious. This bottle here in my hand is the batch A121. I've got a couple other bottles over there. I got a whole shelf of them. different batches, and that brings me into the romance of whiskey with Elijah Craig. The barrel proof batches of Elijah Craig have been different enough that they are like, some people love them, some people hate. I mean, they are different whiskeys, and I've liked them all, and to some degree at least, and I have had batches that were absolutely amazing to my palate. And the romance comes in is the way they are batched like they are with small batch releases. Every batch is, and you can have a batch you really like, and when the bottle is gone, when the batch is gone, you either have to hunt for another one or it's gone forever. And it puts this like heightened importance, this heightened level of for, as I stall for time and think about it, it puts this like heightened emphasis. I enjoy it more, I think about it more, I feel the end of the bottle coming more. The whole thing is heightened in a way I find really great and sort of romantic, and I love that about like actual batched release whiskeys. Elijah Craig is not the only one, it is just the one I go to the most often, so it's the one I talk about it the most. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, $80-ish, always a buy. I always buy it when I creep up to another one I love. This one though is kind of always 70 to 90. We're again pushing a little bit of a range here on this one. Depends a little bit on where and this is my like most frequent go-to as a favorite bottle. I love this bottle. You've heard me rave about this bottle. This bottle was not the topic of the first episode, but it came up as my favorite whiskey in the first episode of the Barrel House, and that is Ardbeg Uigeadail. I love saying the name. I love looking at the bottle. I love drinking the whiskey. Everything about it is spectacular. This is a great whiskey. If you look at the video version, you can see right now, my name is even engraved on this bottle that is almost gone because I love it so much and everybody knows me. Ardbeg Uigeadail is like, it's like Ardbeg 10, but smokier, more alcohol, more ethanol, higher proof, more complex. It's also sweeter and richer. It's more proteiny and meaty. It's got all of the things I like about peated whiskey turned up a little bit, and the things that I like less. I don't really dislike anything about peated whiskey, but the things I dislike or the things I like less are kind of turned down a little bit. And it is like one of those whiskeys that when I drink it, to me it's like, oh, they made this for me. This was made for me. This is like, they were like, there is a slightly overweight balding white guy in the Northeast USA who is gonna love this. You trust me, he's gonna be all for it. And I really can't say enough. I mean, the tasting notes on the front are treacle. I don't know how to say that, but that's what the tasting note says. Bacon and bonfires. And I think that's incredibly accurate. It's so sweet and rich and smoky and proteiny. It's spectacular. I really like that a lot, and it's like a legit favorite for me. Now, what am I drinking, you might ask? And that is the next one on the list, and that is the $80 price point. This is another Scotch, and I'm gonna step away from the smoke for a second. I wanted to get something in there, and this is Longmorn 16. Longmorn 16 is a Speyside. It is so much butterscotch and berries and floral with this really spectacular black pepper spiciness at the back of the palate that rounds into the finish. It's complex. It's got this whole wild unfolding as you drink it. Everything about it. The nose is almost magic on this whiskey. This is a great bottle. This is often, like, I often see this referred to as like a distiller's choice kind of whiskey. It's really artful. Artful is a good word for it. If you like sweeter whiskey, this one's for you. It's butterscotchy. It's got the whole thing going. It's a really, really great Speyside. It's one that I think everybody could like. This one's a little hard to find, not because it's high demand, actually kind of because it's low demand, inexplicably. I think everybody who I've given this to has loved it, and just for some reason, it's marketing, maybe something, it just does not get the notoriety it deserves. people aren't out there chasing it down or something. I think there are a lot of whiskeys that are much worse than this that have people hunting for them. I don't know why. That's gonna come up in the discussion right after I get through this last whiskey, this brief discussion of what price means. Which brings us to the last one, this basically empty bottle here that I need to replace. This is my $100 pick. This is a bourbon-ish. This is a finished bourbon. This is Joseph Magnus straight bourbon whiskey, finished in sherry, and I think this stellar whiskey. I can't wait. This is sourced MGP right now that they are finishing and doing a spectacular job with, and then they are currently working on getting their own whiskey pumped out. I am super excited to see what like a 10-year-old, their own 10-year-old going through this process, like start to finish, is gonna be like. As it stands right now, it's really great. It's spectacular. So they're gonna be up against it to improve on this, but I think they can, and I'm really excited for it. I did an episode on this. There's a whole interesting backstory, family legacy of this whiskey, and Joseph Magnus himself. It's all very and this whiskey, I mean, it's rich orange peely and dark chocolate, and it's got this whole brown sugar, peppery, the whole thing. Spectacular whiskey. This comes in right at $100. It's like $94 here. I've seen it for $110 a couple of times. Totally worth it. It's really good. It's probably, there's a couple other in here that I would put close to it in a similar price point wise to my palate though. I think to most people, unless you are talking to somebody who really likes, it's not really any of those. It's a way more crushable, drinkable whiskey. It's like 50.5%. Or maybe 50 exactly, I don't remember, somewhere in there. I think this is a more general crowd-pleasing whiskey, and it's just really good. And that's the last one I have on the list for this thing. If you have a whiskey in your like $30 to $100 range that you really like that wasn't on the list, reach out, let me know. Put it in the comments on YouTube or hit me up on Instagram, whatever. You can get me at barrelhousepocast.com too. There's links to all the ways, bigleemedia.com/Discord will get you to me also. But let me know what you think about all that. Now, price for whiskey. Round us out and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Price for whiskey, what does it mean? Price does not equal quality. This is a thing that I talk about all the time. People ask me all the time how much they have to spend to get good whiskey. $20. There you go. You can get good whiskey for $20. Price and quality are not a one-to-one. With price and rarity are more so a one-to-one with whiskey. There is a general trend for better with price. It's not all of them, but there's a general trend as price goes up, quality goes up to a point. There are some that step out of that on either side, and then probably around $50, it no longer has any real correlation. The whiskey is all over the place, the price keeps going up, and you just gotta know what you're looking for. I know it's not a satisfying answer for a lot of people, but I've definitely had $60 or $80 whiskeys that I was unimpressed with, or like your Wellers that are totally fine but are actually $25 whiskeys that are selling for $200 or $300 and are not $300 good. They're not close to $300 good. Price is rarity for the most part, is not quality. So keep that in mind. It's just the least satisfying answer, right? You want me to say, go grab a $50 bottle, you're gonna be good, but it's not really how it works. I wish it did. I wish I could also just be like, hey, just go pick a bottle and you'll like it, whatever, give you some real easy guideline. But if I could, there would be no reason for the show. And fortunately for me, I can't. If I could, I would though. Honestly, I would tell you, just spend this much and you'll get a good whiskey, and that would be the end of it. But what it comes down to is you kind of have to do your research. Everybody's taste is different. Whiskeys are all over the place. There are a lot of people sourcing whiskey, which I have no problem with, but they're sourcing the same whiskey another company is sourcing. Everybody's buying MGP. Some people are putting the same MGP in $20 bottles that other people are putting in $80 bottles, and you're just getting screwed if you buy the expensive one. And so unfortunately, because it's really hard to just look at a label and know, you kind of got to do your research. You got to get online, you got to watch reviews or read reviews or whatever, and you got to learn what your palate is like, what you like for flavor profiles, and kind of go off of that. It's not an easy 2 bullet point answer to what price means. I wish it was. That's gonna do it for the show. If you have questions, comments, because if you're at a place you're gonna buy a whiskey, you don't know about it, shoot me a message on Instagram. If I see it while you're still there and I know about it, I will totally help you make a decision before you buy, assuming I see it in time. So that's also available. Joe's whiskey advice on the fly. So do that. Hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. Links to all that are on barrelhousepodcast.com. Rate and review the show on iTunes. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. All those things. And if you have the $1 a month to spare, Barrelhouse Podcast, patreon.com/barrelhouse to support the show. It means a ton to me. Until next time, take care. The Barrel House is written, produced, and hosted by Joe Kane, and it's a proud member of the Igloo Media Network. Views and opinions expressed on this show belong only to the mouth they came out of, and as always, please remember to drink responsibly. Slanjava.